Hey everybody, Mike Banner here for another episode of the 62 Who Knew podcast, the podcast that painfully brings to your attention sometimes the double-edged sword of longer lifespans. Isn't it great that we're all going to be living till our 90s, or at least 50% of us are, the ones that come close to taking care of themselves. But do we want to live to be our 90s? It's some interesting sometimes when I talk to somebody and go, the statistics say you're going to live another 30 years. It always amazes me when somebody goes, I don't want to live another 30 years. I go, what kind of thing is that to say? But 62 Who Knew was created for that purpose, the double-edged sword of longer lifespans. Because the truth of the matter is that approximately 2% of this country, that's a mathematic fact, is capable of living their last 30 years of life in retirement with quality of life, cost of living, everything built in. The rest of us, we're going to be working. And the rest of us are also going to constantly be worried, whether you admit it or not. Did I get my long-term care insurance? Should I have got long-term care insurance? Should I have canceled my life insurance when the kids got older? God, I really wanted to pay off my mortgage. I never did get around to that. Should I get a reverse mortgage? Are those things good? I heard terrible things about them. Should I have annuities? Why do I have CDs? The questions never stop in your face as you approach your 60s, mid-60s, because that's what we think about. And the truth of the matter is, the number one fear in the United States of America, and I'm sure my guest who's coming on today, we're very excited about our guest, will agree with this because it's not disagreeable. For many, many years, studies were done all over the country. When I say many years, I'm talking going on a century. Of as people approach, especially the last 50 years, what is their greatest fear? So there are many learned institutes, Boston Institute, Harvard, many medical institutes that put 1,000, 1,500 people into a huge auditorium in their early 60s. Every different color, every different religion, every different financial class. And they find out what is that person's greatest fear as they're approaching that retirement age, that magic Medicare age of 65. And for almost 75 years, seniors' number one fear was death. And that made sense. I'm in my mid-60s now. I'm looking at my own, mortality. It made sense until 8 years ago. 8 years ago, every one of these studies, medical and social, death moved to number 2. What's the number one fear of an older American today? Outliving their money. And for a great country like this, the greatest country in the history of history, to have our seniors' number one fear be running out of money, that's a terrible thing. 62 Who Knew was created to bring actionable advice, the correct guests that can help you get from 62 to 92 and beyond, okay? And do it with quality of life. We want the last 30 years of your life to be the best 30 years of your life. So that's 62 Who Knew. Our audience is growing by thousands every week, which we're very, very excited about. And today I do my best to get the best of the best on every week. And this week is absolutely no exception to that fact. Let me give you a little bio on our guest. Mr. Tony Steuer is an internationally recognized financial preparedness advocate, podcaster, award-winning author, and fintech advisor. Tony is the chief evangelist at Yetworth Collaborative. He is an expert content reviewer for NerdWallet, as well as a member of the Forbes Advisor Insurance Advisory Board. This is a quote by Tony. I empower people to take control of their financial lives by making financial literacy accessible, practical, and anecdotable. Through my books, podcasts, curated recommendations, and experts' insights, I help individuals and financial professionals ask the right questions to improve money conversations and take meaningful action. If this man wasn't built for 62 Who Knew, I don't know who will. Anthony, we need to send him a 62 Who Knew cup, a 62 Who Knew shirt. We need to get it all to him. Tony, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Mike. I'm glad to be here today. Excited.
Well, we had a little discussion beforehand, and we've had emails up and back for the last few weeks, and of course, thank you so much. In June, I'm coming on your podcast. I'm very excited about that. But for a country that can put a computer chip on the tip of a pen, or well, this country actually is probably China, but for a country that could take this and put the universe, put the knowledge of the universe on this, our financial literacy is staggeringly terrible. I mean, just terrible. Again, at the ripe old age that I am, I like saying my birthday this way. I turned 50 16 years ago. That's when somebody asks me how old I am. I go, I turned 50 16 years ago. So many of my friends not prepared to live to be 70, 80, and 90. And they're going to. And when you talk to them about it, it's more emotion than it is, I think, intelligence. No, I know I need long-term care insurance. I know I need to do this. I know I need to do that. What are you waiting for? And it's a very rough discussion. Now, when you have a friend, it's easy discussion. I mean, what are you waiting for? Till when your daughter has to help you off the toilet? Till when your son has to help you in the shower? What are you waiting for? But you can't really do that with a client. You can't really do that with somebody you don't know and love. How did you overcome, because I've watched a lot of your podcasts, I know this is a frustrating topic for you. How do you overcome that emotional, yeah, I know I need to do it, but...
Well, you start to have the conversation. I mean, that's the first part, but you have to be curious and to ask questions to find out why somebody isn't taking action. That's the thing, is that we come in and we have our solutions ready to go, and then we just try to shove our solutions at people rather than having a conversation, understanding, like, okay, where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? What do you see your aging plan is? And once we understand what they want, where they're coming from, what their fears are, what might be holding them back, like you said, is we have to know why they're not taking action. So the why becomes much more important than the what.
Yeah, the why is no doubt. And a lot of them, I think, are, when I say a lot of them, people on a whole, I don't know if they realize, because I know I didn't. What brought me to 62 Who Knew, what gave me awareness was me being a caretaker for my father, who has been gone 20 years now. And wrote a book about my father called A Gift from My Father that did very well. And I just had the greatest father in the world. I just did. I thought that when I was a kid. I still think it. And I looked forward to taking care of my dad when he was older. I mean, he took such damn good care of me my whole life, even as an adult. So I was going to be proud, and I was proud to take care of him. But I didn't realize that at a certain point in life, people need their children to be their children, their son, their daughter, not their nurse, not their healthcare person. I mean, it's great that you want to be there for your loved ones, but it's an incredibly stressful and emotional situation when you're trying to be someone's son and daughter and their nurse and their advocate and helping them throughout life. And people don't realize that. I know they don't.
Yeah, it's an all-encompassing thing that, as you point out, no one person can fill all those roles and, at the same time, lead their own lives. It's a full-time job to become a caretaker. So you have your caretaking, you have possibly kids that you're raising yourself, you have a spouse, partner, you have a job, a career. So it's like, how do you manage all that and manage it effectively? Because that's the other thing that happens is you start doing all these things and you're not doing any of them well or as efficiently as possible. And you want the best care for your parents. And I know that as I age, I hope I get the best care available. I don't want somebody's half attention. And I don't want to put that, and I think this is where you were going, I don't want to put that obligation on my son. I don't want to make him feel like he has to take his life, put it on hold, and take care of me. So we need to rethink how we create our aging plan.
Now that you hit the nail right on the head, because I'm sure your son would love to do that, but do you want your son, and nobody does, want their son or daughter to put their life on hold? And we've had guests on this show that talk about the ramifications of the caretakers and how often, and the statistics just blow my mind, how often the caretaker gets ill or even predeceases the person they're taking care of because of the stress of suddenly putting their job on hold, putting their own children on hold, their own life on hold to become a full-time caretaker. We've brought on some best-selling authors and financial planners. Especially it affects women more than it affects men. I mean, women usually are the caretakers of the family. Not always. Men are catching up. We're getting a little better, but women are usually the matriarchs of the family are usually the ones that take time off work because the child has, terrible asthma, or their mom or dad or their in-laws need help. And it is usually mom that takes time off. And then, quite frankly, 20 years later, when mom and dad are in their early to mid-60s looking to retire, and dad has X amount of dollars in his 401k, and mom has 40 or 50% less. And they go, well, how the hell did that happen? We make the same amount of money. Well, you took 10 years off to take care of mom and dad. And again, the effects at that point in life on people, no one seems to be taking into consideration. I shouldn't say no one, but the masses are not taking into consideration. They're putting your life on hold, what it may do to you in 20 years.
Yeah, that's just it. And I think the biggest thing, as you point out, is the gender difference. One is 100% women end up being caretakers the majority of time. Women earn less money. So you have that. Even if a woman works the exact same amount of time as a man, I think they're still making 80% of what a male makes, but they're the ones who have to take time off to have a child. And they may, take a lesser position because they want to be there for the kids when they get out of school, or to be active in schools. So there's a lot of reasons why women are going to earn less money, but yet women are the ones who have the longer lifespan. They're the ones who tend to stay healthier. So women are also going to be caretakers for their husbands. So again, it's like women are behind the eight ball, from the jump with all of these different factors. And that's when you have a couple that view the man and woman equally. And in a lot of cultures or demographics or however you want to slice it, it's not viewed the same. The man is viewed as the head of the household. But we all know who are married that it's usually the woman who makes the household go. It keeps things together. So it's changing that perspective, as you point out.
Yeah. I've always said on almost all financial issues, social issues, economic, political issues, this great country of ours, if you go back, 80 years, if you go back to the 40s and 50s, you go back to the civil rights, movements, this country has always been on a pendulum. No matter what we're talking about, you shouldn't have a big gulp. You should have a big gulp. Integration, segregation. The country operates on this incredible principle where the pendulum usually swings way too far in one direction. That's usually a bad direction. And then the country goes, oh my God, what have we been doing? So they swing the pendulum to the totally opposite side, okay, to try and make up for bad things. And then ultimately it comes to the middle where it should be. And I think that's what we're seeing right now between the sexes, quite frankly, because there was a time, and it was a ridiculous time, although it wasn't that long ago, where the man was the head of the house, we made the money, and you stayed home and got pregnant. Well, those days are long gone, thank God, okay? And then there was the time that if you even suggested that the women would be better off taking care of the house, taking care of the children, being the matriarch that took off of work to have children. Well, there was a time that 90% of the independent women in this country would call you a chauvinist. We're equal. The truth is, we're not equal. Not one is better than the other. At my age and with my experience, if I did have to pick one was better than the other, I think almost any man with a half a brain would say women are more intelligent, women make better decisions. You're only young when you think that that you're making the better decision or that you're controlling the boat. To the young guys that are watching, and I don't think we have many young guys watching. I think our average audience is above 55. But for the young men that are watching, you're not driving the boat, believe me. I think now we're finally getting to a point, quite frankly, where a woman doctor, a woman scientist is just as proud to be a mom and keep that home together as she is possibly to invent the next cure for cancer. And that's the way it should be. because women are the caretakers of this world. And I think that's a staggering thing.
Yeah, 100%. And when we bring it back to financial services, is we can see that women are actually leading the change in dealing with these issues.
Yes.
There's a statistic that shows 70%, 70 to 80% of widows will leave their current financial planner, and usually they'll end up with another woman financial planner. So the thing is when we're talking about aging plans and caregiving, women are already addressing these issues, or if they're not addressing it, they're thinking about these issues and they're really planning for their longevity, where the men are still interested in like, okay, well, what's the best investment return I can get? Where women are having that thought like, okay, do I have enough money? Are my kids going to be taken care of? Can we help our kids with their families? Things like that. So there is a different mentality that I think is good for the financial industry. We're seeing it. I just keep coming back to George Kinder and the life planning movement, where we're talking about goals and dreams and values. And I think that's a big part of this conversation, is that, you can't say that all women are like this or all men are like that. Yeah, I mean, you can never say that, but the majority of times is, in my experience, women are interested in those bigger goals, but in really thinking deeply about the whole concept rather than focusing on the parts. Men want to fix this part or that part, and a woman's like, okay, well, I want to go here. And that's a huge difference. And when we think about all this, is we have to understand that that's really where we should be going with our planning as we're aging, is thinking about like, okay, well, where do we want to go and what's the best way to get there?
Yeah, and there's no doubt they think more along those lines. Then there's another big factor. We had an incredible attorney by the name of Nancy Hedrick on about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Nancy is the number. You might want to have Nancy on your podcast. Quite frankly, I'll make the introduction. Nancy is the number one expert in the country on what is now termed as gray divorce, which is divorce above the age of 45, which, by the way, has tripled in the last 25 years. That is another thing, another change in society, where people are getting into their 40s, 50s, 60s, looking at their spouse, and it's not a bitter young divorce. I hate you. We never should have got married. It's, we've grown apart. We did a good job with the children, but this is not the way I want to spend the next 20 or 30 years of my life. And I think the fact that gray divorce, people have been getting divorced in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, that's a whole new realm of financial planning. Just an entirely new realm of financial planning, because you're not necessarily arguing over the house, but somebody's got to get the house, and then there's probably going to be another house. And then if this is one of those marriages where mom took a decade or so off to take care of people, and her 401k is not as large as dad's 401k, most men are not aware of the fact that federal law says he's going to split that K with her because it was created while they were married. I just learned that from Nancy a month ago, and it never used to be that way. So I think, again, the different social norms of people getting divorced. It's funny, statistics on regular marriages are up. For 30, 40 years, the divorce rate was going higher and higher on a first marriage. They've leveled out and even come down. But second and third marriages are skyrocketing. And I do think it's because women are turning around and looking at a guy and going, yeah, that's not what I signed up for. It may have been what I signed up for 20 years ago, but it sure as hell isn't what I signed up for now.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other issue. I'm not going to get into marriage counseling in this episode.
No, definitely not marriage.
Coincidentally, I did write co-author an article for Rethinking 65 on just the issue of gray divorce and long-term care insurance planning. And the big takeaway from that article that I think is might be helpful for the audience is that the cost of long-term care insurance should be part of the divorce agreement. So as you're going through the divorce agreement, is that you need to think about the long-term, and not just long-term care insurance, but the cost of long-term care as part of figuring out your divorce agreement and making sure that is a part of it.
No, there's no doubt. Why do you, nobody's been able to figure this out, not in not in the 20 years that I've been talking to experts and interviewing people, it's so hard to get people to engage in that LTC conversation. Let's forget buying it for a second. Even having, I've thought about it, but we'll deal with that some other time. They keep kicking that can down the road until it's kicked too far down the road. And I hate to say it, it's just too late. I have a couple of friends like that who we've been talking for years, and then suddenly one had a heart attack. And thank God they lived through it, and they're going to be fine. But they can't buy long-term care insurance anymore. And they just looked at me and I went, I'm not going to say I told you so. I love you too much. I said, but I told you so. You can't. It's one of those things. What's that old adage? There's no use in fixing the barn door after the horses escape. You got to fix the barn door first. I've always liked that analogy. Don't ask me why. I've never had a barn. I've never had a horse. But I've always liked that analogy. But what is this with people and not wanting to admit that if you're going to make it to 90 or even 100, which we will, that you're going to need help, and that help needs to be professional?
Well, it's because we're having the wrong conversation in my mind, is that we're coming in and, for example, with long-term care insurance, we're leading with long-term care insurance. We're hitting people over the head with statistics, and while they're 100% accurate, that the majority, 50% of people are going to need some kind of long-term care help, with activities of daily living, blah, blah, blah. It's a turnoff. So think about it this way. If you walked into your doctor's office, and you need a checkup, you're there for your, and a lot of people don't get their annual checkup. So, it's my PSA here, go get your annual checkup if you're not doing it. But aside from that, if you walked into your annual checkup and your doctor said, well, I'm glad you're here today, Michael, let's talk about a knee replacement. And you're like, well, what? My knee's not even bugging me. And the doctor's all like, well, at some point your knee's going to give out. I have a statistic that shows 70% of people are going to need knee replacements. So, I have a special today. I can give you a knee replacement for 10% off. And because you're younger, it's going to be cheaper because you have a shorter recovery time after I give you a knee replacement. You go get a new doctor, right?
Yeah, that's
Probably
right.
even file a complaint with
That's a great example. I've never heard that. I love that.
But that's the thing, is it gets back to communicating, to listening, to asking questions. It's like, well, what's your plan for aging? Do you have a plan for aging? Have you thought about it? Is, helping your clients create a life and a plan and a goal, and then you can show, well, okay, so if you're going to have an aging plan, there's, and this is what a financial planner, a good financial planner will do. They'll say, okay, well, if this is, you want to stay in your home, then this is what you'll have to do to be able to stay in your home. If you think you want to move to a retirement community that has advanced memory care, like my parents live in a community where, they're living in their own house, but there's also an attached memory care unit and, full on nursing home. So if one of them needs advanced care, the other one can stay in their place, be able to walk over and see the other spouse who needs more care, but that they've made that decision because that's how they want their aging plan to look. Now, for them, they decide not to buy long-term care insurance. They self-insured. Is that a good decision or not? Well, it's their decision, not my decision. With my mother, she was in a different situation without a lot of assets. Aging plan was to stay in her house. So my sister and I got together and bought a long-term care insurance policy for her. But both plans were based around what my parents wanted, what their overall financial situation was, and how we could best get there. And that's how we have to talk to our clients, is we can't go in with products. We have to go in and find out what they want. We have to ask questions. We have to be detectives. And then we help them if we have the right tool, like you talked about reverse mortgage. Well, maybe a reverse mortgage is a good tool. We looked at that for my mother because she wanted to stay in her house. So then a reverse mortgage becomes a good tool to pair with a long-term care insurance policy. But for my other parent, it's not a great tool. Those are both the wrong products because that had nothing to do with their goals. So it's all about helping people talk about what their aging plan is in this case, and then how can we best help them get there.
Absolutely, which leads into, I mean, you created the Get Ready movement. Talk to the audience about that.
Well, it entails a whole few parts. So the first part started with just having an inventory of all your assets and debts, is because that's the first thing. Most of us don't know, all of our bank accounts. We forget, that we have a 4K with a former employer. We forget about that life insurance policy we bought 30 years ago. We have all these things floating around and we don't inventory them. So the first thing is, my first book, Get Ready, is about just inventorying, creating an inventory of everything, getting organized so you can see what you have, what you don't have. Then the Get Ready Blueprint, which is the following book, and when people join the Get Ready movement, is they get a weekly action item. And over the course of a year, it helps people review all areas of their financial life, because that's the big thing. So many of us buy a financial service or product, put it on autopilot, and don't come back and revisit. Like, one of the
Right.
weekly action items is to review the beneficiaries, not only on your life insurance policy, but on your bank accounts. The TOD, the name's failing me now, but
That's it.
when you pass away, and then
Yeah.
the beneficiary on your retirement account, because I can't tell you how many times as a consultant I saw an ex-spouse as a beneficiary on an account. It happens all the time. And it's because we don't have everything organized and we're not reviewing it on a regular basis. So that's the core of what it's doing. The other part of what it's doing with the Get Ready Money podcast is that I'm trying to collaborate with people just like yourself who are doing things in other areas that I don't handle, so that they can say, okay, well, I've listened to Michael talk about reverse mortgages. So I can go find out more information about that, or where I can listen to his podcast to find out more about aging and find some great resources. So I try to collaborate with as many people as possible. And that's a big part of the movement, is to say, like, oh, well, you're organizing it, but you also need resources in all these different areas. So that's what the Get Ready movement is all about, is trying to organize and monitor everything.
I love the fact that you give them actionable items to do. I'll tell you, it's happened to me, I won't say hundreds of times, but tens of times over the years, when I'm doing a reverse mortgage for someone and they go, Michael, can we do the reverse mortgage in a trust? I go, of course we can. But of course you have to send me a copy of your trust for me to give to my closing agent and our legal department. And they send a copy of the trust via email, and I look at it, and it says the John and Mary Smith Trust, and I open it up, and there's just no words. So I'll call back up, and I go, I think you just sent me the cover page. You need to send me the whole trust. I go, no, we sent you the trust. I go, no, there's nothing actually in it. What do you mean? We went to, I'm making this up, this part. We went to trust.com, and we paid $79, and we filled everything out. And they sent us our trust. I go, but did you put assets in the trust? What do you mean? Okay, well, the first time that happened, I went, well, that happens. But the second, third, fifth, where people think they have a trust because they went online and paid $49 or $79 to fill out their names, addresses, certain beneficiaries, but there's nothing in the trust. I go, you didn't do the trust. You just filled out the stuff. I go, oh. I mean, you talk about financial literacy or illiteracy in this country.
Yeah, well, that's just it. And it's not only trust, is I see this across the spectrum, is things that aren't completed, or things that people, like you said, is they think they've taken care of. Like, long-term care insurance is a great example. People go, well, I have Medicare, and they're going to pay if I go in a nursing home. So I'm covered. I don't need to talk about this. Well, it pays a little bit of a benefit in a nursing home, I think, for like a week,
Yes.
and that's it. So you don't really have long-term care insurance. But so it's that kind of thought. So it does come back to financial literacy. And that's why I've concentrated on financial literacy at the core of all of this. But the bigger challenge is, over the course of the last 10 to 20 years, billions of dollars have been spent, not only in the US, but around the world, to increase financial literacy. There's so many resources on the internet. everywhere you go, you can get financial literacy. Your bank has, sign up for financial wellness. We have a Vanguard K plan, and Vanguard has these financial wellness webinars, but yet nobody is getting more financially literate. All the surveys show that Americans and people around the world are just about as financially literate as they were before all these resources rolled out.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is that we're not engaging people and making it of interest to them. And the questions they want to answer is they can go watch 1,000 videos on how to properly diversify your assets in a 4K account. But the question people are asking, like you mentioned at the very beginning, I want to make sure I have enough money to live on for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's the question they're asking. And then the information we're throwing at them is like all the details. And again, let's go back to the doctor in the knee replacement. Does the doctor tell you like, okay, well, before I give you the knee replacement, I'm going to tell you the history of knee replacements. I'm going to tell you about every knee replacement on the market. And you're going to need to be a knee replacement expert and fully understand this before we can do the procedure. The doctor's not going to do that. They're going to say, well, there's 2 or 3 different ways we can do this. This is going to be the outcome. You're going to be out for this long. But this is the bottom line. If you want to read more about it, you can go to this website and read more about.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Yeah.
Or, like I had a procedure with Kaiser on my back and, they go watch some videos on it if you're curious. But the doctor said, like, look, this is what I think based upon your symptoms. This is what I'm recommending. You have 2 or 3 choices. And that was it. He didn't say like, well, you need to understand all these parts of the back surgery and the 10 parts of the back, and all this stuff. And yet, if you go to financial services, it's like, okay, well, I need a long-term care insurance policy. Well, before we can do that, I got to show you 20 different proposals that are each 50 pages long. And I want you to read through them. And then you get this thing from the state that you have to read through about everything ever written about long-term care insurance. And then we go, oh, well, that person really didn't take any action.
He fell asleep an hour ago. That's why.
Well, because they don't care. You've convinced them at that point that there's an issue that they should think about taking care of. You go, okay, they're on board. They're all like, yeah, I think long-term care insurance is a good way to take care of the potential risk of needing long-term care. But you've lost them along the way because you've just drowned them in information that they don't need, or they're not even trained to understand. And the challenge is, and you've talked to a lot of people on your podcast, is most of the people in the industry don't understand the policies that they're selling either. And insurance companies just keep rolling out policies with more features and more benefits, and nobody has any clue about how any of these things work. And that's a challenge. We're not focused on just solving the problem.
You've hit a couple of points that, quite frankly, no guest has ever hit. Number one, and I can't believe we haven't brought this up in the past with other people, but you are right about too much information. I mean, thanks to this, this nation, there's no doubt, is on information overload. Now, that's not just long-term care or Medicare. That's on their favorite actor's love life. That's on what that favorite actor eats. That's on the favorite actor's diet. I mean, we know everything about everything, even when it's false. People believe it. There's no doubt that this nation is on information overload, and there is a such thing as TMI, too much information. But you're so right about that. I've been, for lack of better terms, blessed to know some of the finest long-term care experts in the nation. I mean, if you sat down with them, you would just go, even a professional like yourself, go, wow. But you're right. I've sat in presentations with them to learn. And the first half hour is basically a history on long-term care insurance. And I find it a little interesting, and, and they think it builds their credibility, and maybe it does. But, I won't even use the doctor and the knee replacement analogy. But, I mean, I took my car in a couple of days ago to get fixed, and it cost $900, and it got fixed. But you want to know something? All I wanted to know is what's wrong, how much, fix it. I didn't really need, and they didn't give me, a history on brake pads and calipers. I just don't care. I just want the car to be safe and stop. But you're right. I'm thinking about my favorite people and I mean favorite people, not just long-term care people I break bread with. My God, they go into that history. They want to explain. And I think you're right. I think we're turning off the masses, by over-explaining the entire situation. They have a need. Let's meet that need simply, correctly, economically feasible for them, because that's different for everybody. But I've never heard anybody put it like you just did. I think we are giving people, especially on long-term care insurance. Let me tell you why all the underwriters actually pulled out of long-term care insurance 10 years ago. Oh my God, the industry shrunk, but now they're all coming back. Why are you saying that? I'm thinking this out loud for the first time. Why are you saying that? I love the way you put that. I really do. It's just, we got to go in and we've got to meet their goals. And I like that refreshing view without a doubt.
Well, you hit it on the nail on the head with a car with the brakes. It's because I'm just thinking about that. When I take my car in and I need new brakes, we've been going to the same people for 20 years.
Me too.
And I tell the guy, I go, hey, my brakes are low. He goes, okay, I'm going to put in some new brakes. I don't know if they're, GE brakes. I don't even know if GE makes brakes. I have no idea who makes brakes, and I don't care. I got my guy. He's worked on our car. I know he knows what he's doing. He's a good guy. He's, well regarded. He gives us a fair price. I don't even know what kind of brakes he puts in there, and I don't
just
care.
know the car stops when you hit the pedal.
That's important. Having a car that stops when you hit the pedal is a key.
Yeah. Can you imagine going into a nice restaurant and ordering a filet mignon and have the waiter go, let me tell you about this cow. Whoa, this was a cow. Let me tell you, you'd be walking out of the, be going, check, please. But it's not just, now that I think about it, it's not just long-term care insurance. It's what a lot of financial planners do on pretty much everything. I can't decide whether I should get an indexed annuity or should I just be like my grandparents and buy a CD at 3.5%. Well, let me give you the history of annuities and why they are what they are. I guess there's a certain element of expertise there that I'd like to see my financial planner have, but I more would like to just see, here's the statistics, and here's why you're going to get 12.5% on this indexed annuity. But if you go into Bank of America, you're going to get 4.5% on your CD. Which would you rather have, 4.5 or 12.5? There's got to be a happy medium in there where we're not explaining it away. What's that old adage? You never want to. I know a couple of people like this where I've had to say to people, when I ask you what time it is, I just want to know what time it is. I don't want to know how the clock works. Just tell me what time it is. I remember somebody saying that to me about reverse mortgages about 15 years ago. I went into this detail. So many people think bad things about reverse mortgage, and you don't lose your house and your children are not screwed out of that. And I went into this explanation, and this guy who I knew well looked at me and went, what are you doing? I want a freaking reverse mortgage. Why are you even, what are you doing? Just take your stuff out. And I don't know why I was doing that. I do that with everybody because everybody thinks bad things about reverse mortgages. He goes, I don't. Oh, that's cool. It's like, sometimes you're also so close to your own situation that you need a fresh set of eyes to go, what are you doing? Why are you saying these things?
It's a human tendency to show off for knowledge.
Yeah.
That's what it really is.
Or lack thereof in today's world a lot too.
Well, it's usually people, the most experienced top financial planners and insurance people, they say less. They let the client do the majority of the talking. They listen. They solve the problem. They don't need to show off. Maybe they have the diploma behind them that says they're a certified financial planner or chartered financial analyst. They went to, wherever. But they let their work show off their experience, and their expertise just by coming in with a solid plan. And the quote I always come back to is by Mark Twain. And he said, I'm sorry I'm sending you this long letter. I didn't have time to write you a shorter letter.
I love that.
And if you think about it, that's the whole financial services industry. It's like, how come we can't write shorter letters when we're talking about this
God,
stuff?
I love that. I'm writing that down. Well, while we're talking about financial...
Mark Twain. No, I'm kidding.
So let me cross out Mark Twain. That was Tony Steuer. Well, let's talk about financial plan. I mean, when I have a professional like you, the hour goes so quick. I mean, we're 3/4 of the way through the hour. It's ridiculous. And there's so much that we want to talk about, and so much that we want to share with people. But let's talk about financial planners for a second, because they are the crux of the financial world in a way. Let's face it, there's hundreds of thousands of them. The great majority, now they divide up into IFAs, independent financial advisors. Insurance agents are mostly financial advisors. CFPs, certified financial planners. There are all types. But on a whole, and I think it's one of our goals here at 62 Who Knew, and again, I always seem to come back to long-term care planning, no matter who I have as a guest. I mean, I knew with you we would be talking about it, but sometimes we have guests that have nothing to do with financial planning. Our guest next week, which is a human interest story about hospice, just the most wonderful people in the world. I wanted to have a show that we weren't talking about financial planning and long-term care. I want to just pay homage to these incredible people that come into people's homes and help them at the worst time. So we have a 62 Who Knew coming up about that in 2 weeks. But even then, I had to go back to financial planning because the nurse came back to me and said, Michael, it's just amazing. And what was the percentage, Anthony? Do you remember? Was it 70-something percent? I think it was
72.
72%, she said, of the people that we go in to take care of were not in anywhere prepared for what happened. I mean, something as simple as a power of attorney. Of course, they thought their Medicare was going to pay for in-home care because mom wants to stay home. She doesn't want to go to the home. But Medicare doesn't pay for that. So even that incredible show that I didn't want to sell anything, I didn't want to appear like I was pushing a service, came back to exactly what you do for a living, preparedness. Because Michael, we walk into a house and the people are in tears. Mom and dad didn't do this. Dad didn't do this. I don't even know where his checking account is. Oh my God. A little, and especially when it happens to a young person. Let's face it, you think hospice and you think long-term care insurance. You think people in their 70s. People in their 50s and 60s have heart attacks, especially in today's stressful world. And they're woefully unprepared for somebody to be able to make a decision to help them when they're incapacitated. Do you run into that a lot as well?
People don't plan. It's across the board, it's, one is life is busy, but the other thing, we don't even know what to plan for. We spend a lot of time in school learning about geography and all these other things that are super important, but we don't graduate from high school. Most people go to college now, but not everybody goes to college. But we don't know, how to manage our household budget, which you think would be a basic skill we would learn in high school, is how to save money. We don't learn how interest rates work. We don't learn how a credit card works. We don't understand what insurance is, but yet we get our first car and, 16, 18, 25, whatever, you get your first car. State says, okay, you got to buy auto insurance. So what do? You go, well, I like the Geico or I like Flow. So I'm going to buy auto insurance there. How much auto insurance do I need? I don't know. What are they selling? Oh, that's the lowest quote. I'm going to get that auto insurance. So we don't have the skills. We don't even know what questions to ask.
That's right.
That's the bigger thing. We make, this is something that I like to come back to. We spend more time researching a new TV than we do researching our auto insurance that renews every year. But we're going to spend a lot more usually on our auto insurance than we are on our television. But it's so off-putting because let's say somebody goes, okay, I want to become curious about my auto insurance. I want to ask some questions. Okay. You're going to a website. You try typing in a question. You don't get the answer to it. So it's like, even if people decide they want to ask a question, or there's 20 videos on auto insurance. What is a deductible? How does a, claim work? All these things. And the person goes, well, I just want to understand, how can I get a lower premium? Or how much coverage do I need? And so that's the thing, is that even if a person gets curious, is it's hard for them to figure out the right information that they need. And that's the key, is when the financial services industry is going to be able to say, hey, we're going to give people the answers to the questions that they're asking rather than the questions we think they should be asking or we want
That's
them
right.
to ask.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I've seen people walk away from professional appointments with more questions than they had when they walked in, and yet the professional doesn't understand why they didn't make a decision to purchase something to protect themselves.
Yeah,
And I was,
present them with a 50-page, financial plan. Nobody prints it out anymore, I don't think. But,
yeah,
but it's a long financial plan. It's got all these recommendations, and they're fantastic. But, so I'm working on a project with somebody now. It's about a letter of instruction. So we had our estate planning redone a couple of years ago when my son turned 18. And so we did our will, we did our trust, we did all that, power of attorney, everything was updated. And then the attorney goes, okay, well, write your letter of instruction to go with it. Well, you know where I am with that letter of instruction? Still working on it. And it's that thing, it's like, because I didn't have the next step, it's like, well, here's sort of an outline for your letter of instruction, but it wasn't detailed.
that's
And there's
right.
nowhere I can go. There's a couple sample letters of instruction online, but there's nothing to really walk me through it and help me finish it. And that's the thing.
Yeah, I think we can talk about this forever and ever. The personal touch, because of technology, has lost us as a lost art. I mean, my children and grandchildren, they're going to not need a real estate agent. They're not going to need mortgage people, as it is right now. Over 60%, I think it's 65% of the mortgage applications in the United States of America are done online. Okay. Soon we're not going to need title companies. We're not going to need appraisers. Realtors hate when I say we're not going to need realtors, but we're not going to need realtors. I mean, right now you can take a virtual tour of a home on your computer where you literally see the water rippling in the pool. Okay. Now, most people are not going to buy a home without seeing it, but we're months, maybe years, but months away from affordable technology. And I say affordable because we have technology right now where somebody could be sitting. Where are you geographically, Tony? I'm sorry, I forgot.
San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay. You could be sitting there wanting to buy a house in Tampa, Florida. There is technology now that you could put on your virtual goggles and walk around the house that you want to buy. Now, it's very expensive, but they're saying in 12 to 24 months, it's going to be $29.99 to have those virtual goggles. And you're going to plug it in. Everything is changing. The lack of personnel, the lack of personal touch. So we've over-equipped ourselves, there's no doubt, with instructions. Like you said, here's your, I have financial planning friends that are the greatest people in the world, but their clients are all over the country. And they have a bond and they have this, but they wouldn't know each other if they passed each other in the mall or sat next to each other in a restaurant. I kind of, not that we're ever going to go back to those days, Tony, I know that. But, my dad's financial planner sat at the living room table with him, several times a year. I don't think that's ever going to happen again, but we definitely, technology has done so much for us. And this is an episode unto itself that could be a 20-hour episode, but it's taken away a bit of the human touch. And when you're trying to stress to somebody the importance of long-term care, the importance of in-home care, the importance of just because you have Medicare, and yes, even a Medicare supplemental policy. Well, Medicare takes care of 80%. I bought a supplemental policy. That's the other 20. I don't need anything else. I'm set for life. So hard to convince that person that they're just so wrong that it's ridiculous. You're not even close to right.
And that's the big problem. We're trying to convince people of things instead of encouraging them to find the answers for themselves. It's like, Michael, have you ever won an argument with anybody?
Not really. I convince them to be quiet because I'm powerful. But I know I walk away going, I didn't convince him of anything. I just got him to shut up.
Yeah, and that's the best possible outcome, right?
That's
but
right.
In reality, if you think about it, none of us have ever won an argument
That's
with
right.
anyone else. The only way we've conceivably won, in a loose sense of the term, is when we've given them sufficient information that they have reached a new decision on their own. And that's the key to understanding all this stuff. For me, is that we have to give people enough information when they're curious so that they make the decision for themselves. We're never going to convince them that they're wrong because they're just going to dig in.
You know, it's so funny that it's you're dealing with 50 and 60-year-old clients, but in many ways it's like dealing with your children. They're just going to dig in. And then there's another school of thought, because I am a dinosaur in many ways, and I'm a closer, okay? And sometimes you have to say to somebody, again, we don't want to talk about, I loved your example of, let's get the knee replacement now, even though you don't really need it. I mean, it was an unbelievable example. But, preventative things, whether it's preventative medicine or getting your long-term care insurance policy in your 50s when it's still cheap and you don't need it. Sometimes you do have to look somebody in the eye. I know I do, and say, look, what you do for a living, I would never argue with you. This is what I do for a living. I'm telling you, now's the right time. Stop thinking it to death. Sometimes you do have to lead the horse to water. You might not be able to make it drink, but sometimes, again, in my old-fashioned dinosaur mind, sometimes you got to lead the horse to water. Sometimes it's your job to do that.
Oh, 100%. And, going back to the knee replacement, the preventative measure you would take is making sure you have health insurance. So when you need the replacement, you're going to be able to take care of it. And that's the thing, is you have to take the right preventative measure. And that's also the other thing, is that the smartest people I know are the ones who ask people for advice, and then they follow that advice. Like, for example, when we're talking about the cars,
yeah,
before I go in to have the brakes changed, I don't research brakes on the internet and go into my guy and say, well, I think you should use brand X brakes,
yes,
because I've read they're like really outstanding. And yet as financial service people, you hear, oh, well, I saw this great video about crypto. And so, should I buy crypto for my portfolio? And then the financial planner has to spend half of the meeting talking about crypto. It's the same thing with doctors. You see all these medication advertisements. Go ask your doctor. Yeah, if you really want to have a good time with your doctor, ask him about all the medications you think you should be taking.
That's right. Yeah, your doctor will love you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a great way to get your doctor to say, hey, you want to see another doctor?
It's right back to information overload. And this country is on information overload on everything. I mean, it's on everything. There's nothing that we don't have information overload on.
Exactly. But it's like with the car. So as you're talking about leading the horse to water, if your brakes are at 25%, or I don't know what measure it is, the exact measure,
Yeah.
when you have to get your brakes changed, and your auto guy says, hey, look, your brakes are below this percentage, you need to get your brakes changed. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
Is he's giving you the information you need to say, I better act now. He's going like, this is the situation. And that's when people take action, is when they're convinced that it's the right time to take action. And people have a pretty good BS detector built in, a lot of people. And then with the financial services industry, it's made so much worse because they've had so many poor experiences over the years. They've heard about their friends having poor experiences, that it makes it really hard for the rest of us.
And with only like a minute remaining, and we'll continue this conversation when I come onto your podcast. But, the fear factor is something that all of us in the financial industry have to be very afraid of. Because let's go back to the brakes. One of the reasons when your mechanic that you want to trust and have a good opinion of course, says, look, you're down to 20 or 25% and you need brakes. One of the reasons you're going to say yes is because you don't want to imagine putting your foot on the brake pedal and not stopping. There is a certain amount of fear there. And the financial planning world has to be very careful about that fear factor close. Tony, you're in your 50s. You're healthy. Now is the time for long-term care insurance. Not in your 70s and 80s. after you possibly have type 2 diabetes, maybe your first hip replacement. Now you're speaking the truth, but it's a fear closing. It's a fear factor closing. And I have a lot of great financial planners. I mean, just incredible people. I go, Mike, I don't want to do a close like that. And sometimes there's that thin line where you gotta hit a little reality. Go, guys, it is going to happen to all of us. Hopefully we all live a very long time, but whether it's that first hip replacement or prostate cancer or a spot on your breast, whatever it may be, thank God in today's world, it's what 62 Who Knew is about, thanks to medical science and breakthroughs. As long as we catch these things at an early stage, it's 100% curable. This isn't 30 or 40 years ago. And the truth of the matter is the scientific and medical breakthroughs that are coming in the next 20 or 30 years, Tony, they make the last 20 or 30 years look like Fred Flintstone. What's coming down the road now. But again, do you have the right financial capabilities, whether it be through insurance, through mitigating risk, or a bank account, or whatever it may be, to avail yourself to all these great things? So, I think there has to be a certain amount of fear. I mean, we go to the supermarket out of fear of being hungry. We stop at a gas station, not because we want to, because we don't want to run out of gas. The number one motivation on the planet is fear. I mean, I know a lot of people would like to go, oh, Michael, that's terrible. I mean, you're never going to work for Hallmark. Number one motivation is love. I don't know if it is. I think love is a fear of not being loved. You want that love. You don't want to. You have a fear of being without it. And it's very hard in the financial world to look people in their 40s and 50s and go, I know you're not thinking of these things now, but please think of them just a little bit so we can put it behind you and you don't have to think about it anymore. But, the fear factor is a very sensitive thing in the financial world. It really is.
Yeah, just one quick word on that is it shouldn't be about fear. It's about mitigating risk. People understand that. You get in a car, you put on a seatbelt. You don't think about it, boy, I'm scared I'm going to get in an accident today. I'm going to put on a seatbelt because it's going to reduce my risk of something happening. And that's where it's a plan. You get in your car, like you said, you put on your seatbelt. You look at the gas. Oh boy, I need to get more gas because I really don't want to run out of gas, but I think I can make it all the way across town, go shopping, and then get gas on the way home. What's my risk? And so we're constantly evaluating risks. So yeah, it is about fear.
It is.
But it's really about and that's how people are evaluating the product. And when you're trying to sell by fear, yeah, that may work. You may close a few sales. But when you're helping people understand that they have a risk and they're making a choice to address that risk, then you're going to have somebody who's going to keep that insurance policy in force, that's going to stick to the plan that they put together because they've decided to take care of that risk.
We're going to say goodbye in a minute.
Sorry.
It's so funny when you were just talking about that, and the age group of my viewership, I don't know about yours, is going to understand this, but all I could think about in the last few minutes, as what you were saying, because it was also true, all I could think about was George Carlin, because one of George Carlin's favorite things, and we should probably play it one day, Anthony. I'm not sure if it would get us viewers or not. Probably would, but one of the things he said throughout history, and I don't want to botch it up, so I won't even try that hard, is that the more syllables we give to words, the better they sound. People came home from World War I, they were in shock. Ooh. When they came home from World War II, it was shell shock. It made it sound a little better. They weren't just in shock. They had shell shock. In many wars preceding that, or succeeding that, it was,
PTSD.
Yeah, it was post-traumatic stress syndrome. Oh, that sounds much better than shock or shell shock. And I think mitigating risk, George Carlin just popped into my mind. Mitigating risk. Fear. I think if you went into chat right now and said to artificial intelligence, give me the definition of mitigating risk, it would go fear, but it does sound better. It does sound better. There's no way to get around it.
Well, that's the key to get people to take action is you have to put it in a way that they can react positively to. Because if you try to scare them, which is what the long-term care insurance industry keeps trying to do.
That's exactly right.
They don't buy long-term care insurance because they're like, I don't want to think about this fear.
No, I think we did good today. We did very good today. Just thank you for being on. I mean, I know how we met through the podcast industry, and it's funny how strangers get together and do good things. And like I said, as soon as I watched a few of your podcasts, I contacted you and said, please come on my podcast. And you were nice enough to say yes. I hope we're going to do a lot of stuff together. And thank you for being here, Tony, so much.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And I feel the same. And look forward to talking to you in 2 or 3 weeks.
That's
whatever
right.
It is.